Sarah Martinez never thought she would hold anything deadlier than medical scissors when she first enlisted in the Army. Growing up in a small Texas town, she had always been the one patching up scraped knees and bandaging cuts after neighborhood football games. Her mother, a nurse at the local hospital, had taught her the basics of first aid before she could even tie her shoes properly. When the military recruiter visited her high school, Sarah knew exactly which path she wanted to take. The combat medic training at Fort Sam Houston was intense, but Sarah thrived under pressure. She learned to treat gunshot wounds, perform emergency surgery in field conditions, and carry wounded soldiers to safety while bullets flew overhead. Her instructors praised her steady hands and calm demeanor under stress. During training exercises, while other medics panicked when simulated explosions went off around them, Sarah remained focused on her patient, methodically working through her medical procedures. After completing advanced training, Sarah was assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division and deployed to Afghanistan. Her unit was stationed at Forward Operating Base Chapman, a dusty outpost surrounded by mountains and constant danger. The base housed not only regular Army units, but also elite Special Operations Forces, including Navy SEALs, who conducted high-risk missions in the surrounding valleys. Sarah quickly earned respect among the soldiers for her medical skills and fearless attitude. When mortar rounds hit the base, she was always the first to run toward the wounded, not away from danger. She treated everything from infected cuts to life-threatening injuries with the same level of care and precision. The soldiers began calling her Doc Martinez, a title of honor in military culture. During her third month at the base, Sarah noticed something that troubled her deeply. Many of the wounded soldiers she treated had been shot by enemy snipers positioned in the mountains surrounding their patrol routes. These weren't random shots. They were precise, calculated kills and wounds that showed advanced marksmanship skills. The enemy snipers were picking off American soldiers with disturbing accuracy, often targeting medics specifically to demoralize units and prevent proper medical care. One particularly difficult day, Sarah treated 7 soldiers who had been wounded in a single patrol. All 7 had been shot by the same sniper, who had positioned himself on a ridge overlooking a frequently used supply route. The shooter had deliberately aimed to wound rather than kill, knowing that wounded soldiers would tie up resources and slow down military operations. Sarah worked frantically to save each man, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was fighting a losing battle. That evening, as she cleaned blood from under her fingernails and tried to process the day's events, Sarah overheard a conversation between 2 SEAL team members. They were discussing the sniper problem and how traditional counter-sniper tactics weren't working against this particular enemy. The hostile shooter was too skilled, too well hidden, and too familiar with the terrain. He knew exactly when and where American patrols would appear, and he used that knowledge to maximum effect. Sarah found herself thinking about the physics of long-range shooting. During her civilian life, she had spent countless weekends hunting with her father and grandfather. They had taught her to shoot accurately at long distances, explaining concepts like bullet drop, wind drift, and target leading. She had never connected those skills to her military service, but now she began to see the mathematical precision required for the kind of shooting that was terrorizing her fellow soldiers. The next morning brought another casualty from the same sniper. This time, it was Private Johnson, a 19-year-old kid from Ohio who had shown Sarah pictures of his girlfriend back home just days earlier. The bullet had shattered his femur and damaged his femoral artery. Sarah worked desperately to stop the bleeding and stabilize him for evacuation, but she could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear she had seen in too many young faces recently. As Sarah finished treating Johnson and prepared him for medical evacuation, she made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't continue to simply patch up the damage caused by this sniper. Someone needed to stop the threat at its source, and traditional military approaches weren't working. The enemy shooter was too good, too careful, and too successful. That afternoon, Sarah approached Master Sergeant Williams, her unit's senior non-commissioned officer, with an unusual request. She wanted to volunteer for sniper training. Williams initially laughed, thinking she was joking. Combat medics didn't become snipers. They saved lives, They didn't take them. But Sarah was persistent, explaining her hunting background and her growing frustration with treating the same types of wounds from the same enemy shooter. Williams listened carefully as Sarah laid out her reasoning. She had been studying the patterns of the enemy sniper's attacks, noting the times, locations, and types of shots. She had also been observing the terrain and weather conditions during each incident. Her medical training had given her an intimate understanding of human anatomy and the precise effects of different types of wounds. Combined with her civilian marksmanship experience, she believed she could predict where and when the sniper would strike next. The conversation continued for over an hour, with Williams asking increasingly detailed questions about Sarah's shooting background and her understanding of long-range ballistics. He was surprised by the depth of her knowledge and her analytical approach to the problem. Finally, he agreed to speak with the base commander about her unusual request, though he warned her that such a transition was nearly unprecedented in military history. Word of Sarah's request spread quickly through the small base. Some soldiers supported her decision, having seen her courage and determination in medical situations. Others questioned whether a medic should be taking lives instead of saving them. The debate created tension in the unit, but Sarah remained focused on her goal. She knew that stopping this particular sniper could save dozens of American lives, and that was worth any controversy her decision might cause. As night fell over the Afghan mountains, Sarah lay in her bunk thinking about the path she had chosen. She had joined the military to heal and help, but now she was preparing to use her skills in an entirely different way. The transition from saving lives to taking them represented a fundamental shift in her military role. But Sarah was convinced it was the right decision. The enemy sniper had to be stopped, and she was uniquely qualified to do it. The meeting with Colonel Peterson took place at dawn in his makeshift office, a fortified container that served as the command center for Forward Operating Base Chapman. Sarah stood at attention while Master Sergeant Williams explained her unusual request. The colonel, a decorated infantry officer with 23 years of service, listened without interruption, occasionally glancing at Sarah's service record spread across his metal desk. Colonel Peterson had never encountered a situation like this in his military career. Combat medics simply didn't transition to sniper roles. The two positions required completely different mindsets, one focused on preserving life, the other on ending it with surgical precision. But the enemy sniper problem had become critical, and conventional solutions weren't working. 3 different counter-sniper teams had failed to locate or eliminate the threat, and American casualties continued to mount. After reviewing Sarah's qualifications, the colonel asked her a series of pointed questions about her motivations and her understanding of what she was requesting. Sarah explained her hunting background in detail, describing years of long-range shooting with her father and grandfather in the Texas Hill Country. She had learned to shoot accurately at distances exceeding 800 yards, adjusting for wind speed, temperature, and elevation changes. More importantly, she had developed the patience and mental discipline required for precision shooting. The colonel was particularly interested in Sarah's analytical approach to the sniper problem. She had created detailed charts tracking the enemy shooter's pattern of attacks, noting the time of day, weather conditions, and tactical circumstances of each incident. Her medical knowledge allowed her to analyze the precise placement and angle of wounds, providing clues about the sniper's position and shooting techniques. This combination of analytical thinking and practical shooting skills impressed the colonel, though he remained skeptical about the transition. The biggest obstacle was time. Traditional sniper training took months of intensive instruction, and the base didn't have those resources available. However, the SEAL team stationed at Chapman had their own sniper specialist, Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez, who had completed multiple combat deployments and possessed extensive experience in urban and mountain warfare. If anyone could provide accelerated training, it would be Rodriguez. Chief Rodriguez was initially reluctant to take on such an unusual student. He had trained many soldiers in advanced marksmanship techniques, but never someone making the transition from medic to sniper. The psychological adjustment alone presented significant challenges. Rodriguez had seen combat medics struggle with the emotional weight of their work, and he questioned whether Sarah could handle the mental shift required to deliberately end lives instead of saving them. The training began immediately in a secluded area of the base where Rodriguez had set up a makeshift shooting range. He started by evaluating Sarah's basic marksmanship skills using a standard military rifle. Her first shots impressed him, tight groupings at 300 yards with minimal adjustment period. Her breathing technique was already well developed, and she demonstrated excellent trigger control and follow-through. Over the next week, Rodriguez pushed Sarah through an intensive curriculum covering advanced ballistics, range estimation, and environmental factors affecting long-range shooting. They worked on calculating bullet drop and wind drift at various distances, adjusting scope settings for different conditions, and developing the mental discipline required for patient observation and precise timing. Sarah absorbed the information quickly, often asking questions that demonstrated deeper understanding than Rodriguez expected. The psychological aspect of sniper training proved more challenging than the technical skills. Rodriguez spent hours discussing the mental preparation required to deliberately end human lives. He explained how professional snipers compartmentalize their actions, focusing on the tactical necessity of their mission rather than the personal implications of their shots. Sarah struggled with these concepts initially, her medical training creating internal conflicts about the value of human life. During one particularly intense training session, Rodriguez observed Sarah through binoculars as she practiced target acquisition and engagement procedures on simulated targets positioned throughout the mountain terrain surrounding the base. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, showing none of the hesitation or uncertainty he had seen in other trainees. When she fired, her shots were consistently accurate, even at extended ranges where environmental factors became increasingly important. The breakthrough came during a night training exercise when Sarah successfully identified and engaged multiple targets in low-light conditions using night vision equipment. Rodriguez had positioned reflective targets at ranges from 400 to 900 yards, simulating the distances and conditions where the enemy sniper typically operated. Sarah methodically worked through each target, making precise adjustments for distance and environmental conditions. Her performance that night convinced Rodriguez that she had the technical skills necessary for the mission. Intelligence reports provided additional urgency to Sarah's training. The enemy sniper had struck again, wounding 2 soldiers from a different unit during a routine patrol. The shooter's pattern suggested he was becoming bolder, taking more risks, and exposing his position for longer periods. This escalation presented both an opportunity and a threat. An opportunity to finally locate and engage the sniper, but also increased danger to American forces in the area. Sarah spent her final training days studying detailed maps of the region, identifying likely sniper positions based on previous attacks and terrain features. She worked with intelligence specialists to analyze photographs and reports from previous encounters, building a comprehensive profile of the enemy shooter's tactics and preferences. The pattern suggested someone with formal military training, possibly a former Afghan army soldier, who had joined insurgent forces. The most crucial part of Sarah's preparation involved familiarizing herself with the specific rifle she would use in combat. Rodriguez provided her with a precision weapon system identical to those used by military snipers, complete with advanced optics and bipod system. Sarah spent hours learning every detail of the weapon's operation, practicing assembly and disassembly, until she could perform maintenance tasks blindfolded. The rifle would need to function perfectly in harsh mountain conditions, and Sarah had to trust her equipment completely. During her final evaluation, Sarah successfully engaged targets at ranges up to 1,200 yards under various weather conditions. Rodriguez observed her technique carefully, noting her steady breathing, smooth trigger pull, and consistent follow-through. More importantly, he saw the mental transformation that had taken place over the intensive training period. Sarah had developed the focused mindset necessary for precision shooting while maintaining her analytical approach to problem-solving. The night before her first mission, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, cleaning her rifle and reviewing intelligence reports one final time. She thought about the wounded soldiers she had treated, remembering their faces and the fear in their eyes. Tomorrow she would attempt to end the threat that had caused so much suffering among her fellow soldiers. The transition from combat Medic to sniper was nearly complete, but the real test would come when she faced the enemy shooter in actual combat conditions. At 0430 hours, Sarah moved through the darkness toward her assigned position, carrying 50 pounds of specialized equipment including her precision rifle, ammunition, observation tools, and communication gear. Chief Rodriguez accompanied her for this first mission, serving as her spotter and providing tactical guidance. They climbed steadily through rocky terrain, using night vision goggles to navigate the treacherous mountain paths without artificial light. The intelligence briefing had identified a high-probability area where the enemy sniper was likely to position himself for his next attack. A supply convoy was scheduled to travel through the valley below at sunrise, following a route that had been targeted 3 times in the past month. Sarah and Rodriguez needed to reach their observation position before dawn, giving them time to scan the surrounding ridges and identify potential shooting positions. Their hide site was located on a rocky outcropping that provided excellent visibility across the valley while offering natural concealment. Rodriguez had selected the position during reconnaissance the previous day, noting sight lines, escape routes, and communication capabilities. Sarah helped establish the position, arranging camouflage materials and setting up their observation equipment, according to the techniques Rodriguez had taught her during training. As the first hints of dawn appeared on the eastern horizon, Sarah began systematic observation of the terrain through her rifle scope. She moved methodically across the landscape, examining every shadow, rock formation, and vegetation cluster that could conceal a human presence. The enemy sniper was known for his patience and camouflage skills, often remaining motionless for hours before taking his shot. Rodriguez monitored radio communications and provided range estimates to potential target areas, while Sarah maintained visual surveillance. They worked as a coordinated team, with Rodriguez calling out specific areas for Sarah to examine more closely. The partnership required absolute trust and clear communication, as any mistake could result in missed opportunities or compromised positions. The convoy appeared in the valley below exactly on schedule, a line of armored vehicles moving cautiously along the dusty road. Sarah tracked their progress through her scope, while simultaneously scanning for muzzle flashes or movement that might indicate the enemy sniper's position. The convoy's route would take them through a narrow section of the valley where previous attacks had occurred, making them particularly vulnerable to long-range fire. Tension mounted as the convoy approached the danger area. Sarah's heart rate increased slightly, but her breathing remained controlled and steady. Rodriguez whispered range estimates and wind direction updates, helping Sarah prepare for a potential engagement. They had rehearsed this scenario dozens of times during training, but actual combat conditions added unpredictable elements that could affect their performance. The enemy sniper struck without warning. A muzzle flash appeared from a ridge approximately 800 yards across the valley, followed immediately by the distant crack of a high-powered rifle. One of the convoy vehicles stopped abruptly as the driver was wounded, creating exactly the type of tactical situation the sniper intended. Sarah immediately swung her rifle toward the source of the shot, but the enemy shooter had already changed position. Rodriguez coordinated with the convoy commander via radio, providing overwatch and updating them on the sniper's general location. The convoy vehicles took defensive positions while medics treated the wounded driver. Sarah continued scanning the area where the shot had originated, knowing that experienced snipers often had multiple prepared positions and could move quickly between them. The second shot came from a different location, approximately 200 yards from the first position. This time, Sarah was ready. She had anticipated the sniper's movement pattern based on the terrain features and her study of his previous attacks. Her crosshairs were already in the general area when the muzzle flash appeared. She observed a brief glimpse of movement as the shooter prepared to relocate again. Sarah made rapid calculations for range, wind speed, and target movement. The enemy sniper was approximately 750 yards away, moving across a slope that would require her to lead the target significantly. She adjusted her scope settings and controlled her breathing, waiting for the optimal moment to engage. Rodriguez provided whispered updates on wind conditions and confirmed her range estimate. The enemy shooter paused behind a large boulder, apparently believing he was concealed from observation. Sarah could see a small portion of his torso through her scope, barely enough for a precision shot. She steadied her rifle on its bipod and began her shooting sequence, controlling her breathing and applying steady pressure to the trigger. The shot had to be perfect. There would be no second opportunity. Sarah's rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed across the valley. Through her scope, she saw the enemy sniper jerk backward and disappear behind the boulder. Rodriguez immediately began scanning the area with binoculars, looking for signs of movement or additional threats. Sarah maintained her sight picture, ready to engage again if necessary, but no further movement was visible from the target area. The convoy resumed movement after confirming that the sniper threat had been neutralized. Radio communications indicated that the wounded driver was stable and would recover fully. Sarah felt a mixture of emotions as she processed what had just occurred: relief that the threat was ended, satisfaction at successfully completing her mission, and a strange emptiness that she hadn't expected. Taking a human life, even an enemy's life, created psychological effects that her training had prepared her for intellectually but not emotionally. Rodriguez observed Sarah carefully as they prepared to leave their position. He had seen many soldiers experience similar reactions after their first combat engagement, and he knew that processing these emotions was crucial for maintaining operational effectiveness. Sarah seemed composed and professional, but he made mental notes to discuss the psychological aspects of the mission during their debriefing. The extraction back to base took 2 hours, moving carefully through terrain that could still harbor enemy forces. Sarah carried her equipment efficiently, showing no signs of the emotional turmoil she felt internally. She had successfully transitioned from combat medic to sniper, but the psychological adjustment would take time. Rodriguez provided subtle guidance and encouragement during the movement, helping Sarah maintain focus on immediate tactical requirements. Upon returning to Forward Operating Base Chapman, Sarah underwent immediate debriefing with intelligence specialists who wanted detailed information about the enemy sniper's position, equipment, and tactics. She provided precise descriptions of everything she had observed, contributing valuable intelligence that would help protect future convoys and patrols. Her successful engagement had eliminated a significant threat, but intelligence indicated that other enemy snipers remained active in the region. That evening, Sarah sat alone in her quarters, cleaning her rifle and processing the day's events. She had achieved her goal of stopping the sniper who had wounded so many of her fellow soldiers, but the victory felt different than she had expected. The transition from saving lives to taking them represented a fundamental change in her role and identity as a soldier. She wondered if she could continue in this new capacity, or if her instincts as a medic would eventually conflict with her duties as a sniper. Word of Sarah's successful mission spread quickly through the base, generating mixed reactions among the soldiers. Some viewed her as a hero who had eliminated a deadly threat, while others questioned whether a medic should be taking lives instead of saving them. Sarah found herself at the center of discussions about the ethics and practicality of her role change, debates that would continue throughout her deployment and beyond. 3 days after her first successful sniper mission, Sarah received orders for a more complex assignment that would test both her shooting skills and her psychological resilience. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target, an insurgent, commander responsible for coordinating attacks against American forces, would be meeting with local tribal leaders in a remote mountain village. The meeting was scheduled for the following morning, and Sarah would have only one opportunity to eliminate the target. The mission presented unique challenges that differed significantly from her previous assignment. Instead of waiting for an enemy to reveal himself through hostile action, Sarah would need to identify and engage a specific individual in a populated area. The target would be surrounded by civilians, requiring absolute precision to avoid collateral damage. Additionally, the shot would need to be taken at extreme range, approximately 100 yards. Due to the terrain around the village, Chief Rodriguez would again serve as Sarah's spotter, but this mission would also include 2 Navy SEALs as security and intelligence specialists. Petty Officer First Class Jackson had extensive experience in target identification and would help confirm the identity of the insurgent commander. Petty Officer Second Class Thompson would provide perimeter security and coordinate extraction procedures. The four-person team would need to work together flawlessly to accomplish the mission and return safely to base. Preparation began immediately, with detailed study of satellite photographs and intelligence reports about the target location. The village was built on a hillside with traditional stone and mud brick buildings arranged in terraced levels. The meeting was expected to take place in the village center, near a small mosque and marketplace. Sarah studied the architecture and terrain features, identifying potential shooting positions and calculating range and elevation adjustments for each possibility. The target himself presented identification challenges that concerned the intelligence specialists. The insurgent commander was known to use body doubles and frequently changed his appearance to avoid detection. Sarah would need to rely on specific physical characteristics and behavioral patterns to confirm target identity before engaging. The margin for error was zero. Shooting the wrong person would create a diplomatic crisis and potentially compromise future operations. Equipment preparation took several hours, with each team member checking and double-checking their specialized gear. Sarah's rifle received particular attention, with Rodriguez and the base armorer verifying scope alignment and ammunition consistency. Every round had been individually inspected and measured to ensure optimal accuracy at extreme range. Weather conditions would also play a crucial role, as wind speed and direction could significantly affect bullet trajectory at 100 yards. The team departed the base at 0200 hours, using a different route than Sarah's previous mission to avoid establishing predictable patterns. They traveled in a modified Humvee for the first portion of the journey, then continued on foot through mountainous terrain that provided natural concealment. The approach to their observation position required 4 hours of careful movement through territory that could contain enemy forces or sympathetic civilians who might report American military activity. Their shooting position was located on a ridge overlooking the target village, carefully selected to provide optimal sight lines while maintaining concealment and escape routes. The SEALs established a security perimeter while Sarah and Rodriguez prepared their equipment. The hide site construction was more elaborate than their previous mission, requiring additional camouflage to remain undetected for an extended period. As dawn broke over the village, Sarah began observing daily activities through her rifle scope. Women carried water jugs to wells, children played in dusty streets, and men gathered in small groups to discuss local affairs. The normalcy of the scene created in strange contrast with the deadly purpose of Sarah's mission. She had to continuously remind herself that the target was responsible for attacks that had killed and wounded American soldiers and Afghan civilians. The waiting period tested Sarah's patience and mental discipline more than any aspect of her previous mission. Unlike the reactive engagement against the enemy sniper, this mission required her to remain motionless and alert for hours while watching for a specific individual among dozens of people moving through the village. Rodriguez provided regular updates on wind conditions and range estimates, while Jackson monitored communications intercepts for intelligence about the target's movements. At approximately 10:30 hours, unusual activity began in the village center. Several vehicles arrived simultaneously, and armed men took security positions around the mosque. Jackson confirmed through intercepted communications that the meeting was beginning as scheduled. Sarah adjusted her position slightly and began systematic observation of individuals entering the mosque compound. The target appeared exactly as intelligence reports had described: a tall, bearded man in traditional Afghan clothing, walking, with a slight limp from an old war wound. Sarah tracked him through her scope as he moved across the compound, noting his distinctive gait and facial features. Jackson provided confirmation through binoculars and communication intercepts that positively identified the insurgent commander. Sarah began her engagement sequence, calculating the precise adjustments needed for an 100-yard shot in current wind conditions. The target was stationary for the moment, standing near the mosque entrance while talking with tribal elders. The shot angle was slightly downward, requiring additional elevation compensation. Sarah controlled her breathing and began applying pressure to her trigger, waiting for the optimal moment when the target was isolated from civilians. The insurgent commander moved suddenly, walking toward a group of children who had gathered to watch the unusual activity. Sarah immediately relaxed her trigger finger and tracked the target's movement, waiting for him to separate from the innocent bystanders. The ethical considerations of precision shooting became intensely personal as she watched through her scope, knowing that any mistake could result in civilian casualties. After several tense minutes, the target moved to a more isolated position where he could be engaged safely. Sarah resumed her shooting sequence, making fine adjustments for the target's new position and updated wind conditions. Rodriguez whispered confirmation of range and environmental factors. Sarah steadied her rifle and began the final phase of her engagement, controlling her heartbeat and breathing to achieve maximum stability. The shot broke cleanly, and Sarah maintained her sight picture to observe the results. Through her scope, she saw the target fall immediately, confirming a successful engagement. Jackson verified the hit through his binoculars while Thompson coordinated with base communications to report mission success. The entire village erupted into confusion and activity as people reacted to the unexpected gunshot. Extraction procedures began immediately, with the team moving quickly but carefully away from their position. Intelligence had indicated that insurgent forces in the area might respond rapidly to attacks on their leadership, making a swift departure essential for team survival. Sarah carried her equipment efficiently while processing the psychological impact of her second successful sniper engagement. The return journey to base took 6 hours, using a circuitous route designed to avoid potential enemy response forces. Sarah remained alert and professional throughout the movement, but Rodriguez observed signs of the emotional strain that comes with taking human lives, even enemy lives. The successful completion of 2 precision shooting missions had established Sarah's effectiveness as a sniper, but the psychological costs were beginning to accumulate. Upon reaching Forward Operating Base Chapman, Sarah underwent extensive debriefing with intelligence specialists and command staff. Her mission had eliminated a significant threat to coalition forces and disrupted insurgent command structures in the region. The success generated requests for additional precision shooting missions, as commanders recognized the strategic value of Sarah's unique combination of medical knowledge, analytical thinking, and marksmanship skills. That night, Sarah sat in her quarters writing a letter to her family, trying to explain her new role without revealing classified details about her missions. She found it difficult to describe the transition from medic to sniper, the psychological challenges of deliberately ending lives, and the sense of professional satisfaction she felt despite the moral complexity of her actions. The letter remained unfinished as Sarah struggled to find words for experiences that seemed beyond normal human understanding. Word of Sarah's successful missions reached higher command levels, generating interest from special operations units throughout the region. Her unique background as a combat medic turned precision shooter had created tactical capabilities that conventional snipers couldn't replicate. Medical knowledge allowed her to predict target behavior, analyze wound patterns from previous attacks, and understand the psychological impact of precision shooting on enemy forces. This combination of skills made her increasingly valuable for specialized missions. Colonel Peterson called Sarah to his office for a briefing that would change the trajectory of her deployment. Intelligence agencies had identified a particularly dangerous insurgent cell operating in the mountains near the Pakistani border. This group specialized in improvised explosive devices and had been responsible for numerous American casualties over the previous months. Traditional military operations had failed to locate or eliminate the cell, as its members were highly mobile and expertly camouflaged. The mission would require Sarah to work directly with a Navy SEAL team for an extended operation, lasting potentially several weeks. Unlike her previous assignments, which involved specific targets in known locations, this operation would require hunting an enemy force that could be anywhere within a 200-square-mile area of mountainous terrain. The psychological demands would be enormous, as Sarah would need to maintain peak performance over an extended period while living in harsh field conditions. Master Chief Roberts, the SEAL team leader, initially expressed skepticism about incorporating an Army medic into his unit's operations. SEALs prided themselves on operating with hand-picked personnel who had undergone years of specialized training. However, after reviewing Sarah's performance reports and speaking with Chief Rodriguez, Roberts agreed to include her in the mission planning process. Her analytical approach and unique perspective might provide advantages that traditional special operations personnel couldn't offer. Preparation for the extended operation required Sarah to learn additional skills beyond precision shooting. YAR, SEAL team taught her advanced camouflage techniques, silent movement procedures, and survival methods for operating in hostile territory without resupply for extended periods. She learned to construct concealed observation posts, communicate using hand signals and whispered radio procedures, and navigate using only natural terrain features. The most challenging aspect of preparation involved psychological conditioning for sustained operations under extreme stress. Roberts explained that extended missions created mental fatigue that could compromise decision-making and shooting accuracy. Sarah would need to maintain peak alertness while dealing with sleep deprivation, inadequate food, and constant threat of enemy contact. The SEAL team had developed mental techniques for managing these stresses, and they spent considerable time teaching Sarah their methods. Equipment selection for the extended mission differed significantly from Sarah's previous assignments. Instead of returning to base after each engagement, the team would remain in the field for weeks, carrying everything they needed for survival and mission completion. Sarah's rifle system was modified with additional accessories for extended use, including a suppressor to reduce noise and muzzle flash during nighttime operations. The mission began with helicopter insertion at a landing zone 20 miles from the suspected enemy operating area. The team would approach their target zone on foot, establishing temporary base camps and observation posts along the way. Sarah carried a full combat load, including her precision rifle, ammunition, medical supplies, food, water, and survival equipment. The total weight exceeded 70 pounds, requiring excellent physical conditioning and mental toughness. Movement through the mountainous terrain proved more challenging than Sarah's previous missions. The SEAL team moved primarily at night, using natural darkness for concealment while navigating treacherous paths and steep slopes. Sarah learned to move silently across loose rock and through dense vegetation, techniques that differed significantly from conventional military movement procedures. The SEALs emphasized that a single noise or visible light could compromise the entire mission. After 3 days of movement, the team established their primary observation post on a ridge overlooking a valley suspected of containing enemy camps. The position provided excellent visibility across multiple approach routes while offering natural concealment and defensible terrain. Sarah helped construct the hide site using local materials and camouflage techniques that would make their position virtually invisible from ground level or aerial observation. Intelligence gathering became the team's primary focus during their first week in position. Sarah spent hours each day observing the valley through her rifle scope, cataloging movement patterns and identifying potential target locations. Her medical background proved valuable in analyzing behavioral patterns and predicting when individuals might be most vulnerable to engagement. The SEALs were impressed by her analytical approach and attention to detail. The breakthrough came during the second week when Sarah observed unusual activity in a remote section of the valley. Through her scope, she identified what appeared to be an improvised explosive device manufacturing facility, recognizing the telltale signs of chemical mixing and electronic assembly work. Her medical knowledge helped her identify hazardous materials and predict the facility's operational schedule, based on the workers' behavior patterns and safety procedures. Master Chief Roberts confirmed Sarah's assessment through additional observation and electronic surveillance. The facility was producing the sophisticated IEDs that had been causing American casualties throughout the region. Eliminating the facility and its key personnel would significantly disrupt enemy operations and save coalition lives. However, the target presented tactical challenges that would test every aspect of Sarah's training and experience. The facility operated primarily at night, when cooler temperatures reduced the risk of accidental explosions during chemical mixing processes. Workers arrived and departed using different routes, making it difficult to predict their movements. Most importantly, the facility was located at extreme range, nearly 1,400 yards from the SEAL team's position, requiring shooting skills at the absolute limits of Sarah's capabilities. Sarah spent several days studying the target area and planning her engagement sequence. The shot would need to be taken during a narrow window when the facility's key bomb maker was visible and isolated from other personnel. Weather conditions would be crucial, as even slight wind changes could cause a miss at such extreme range. She worked with the SEAL team to identify backup plans if the primary engagement failed. The night of the planned engagement, Sarah settled into her shooting position with Master Chief Roberts serving as her spotter. The other SEAL team members established security positions and prepared for rapid extraction if enemy forces responded to the gunshot. Everyone understood that success or failure would depend entirely on Sarah's ability to make an impossible shot under combat conditions. Through her scope, Sarah watched the bomb-making facility come to life as insurgents arrived for their nightly work. She identified her primary target, a tall, thin man who appeared to be directing the manufacturing process based on his interactions with other workers. Intelligence reports had described this individual as the cell's most experienced bomb maker, responsible for creating the sophisticated devices that had killed numerous American soldiers. Sarah began her engagement sequence, making careful calculations. For the extreme range and environmental conditions, the shot would require perfect technique and a degree of luck that no amount of training could guarantee. She controlled her breathing and steadied her rifle, knowing that this engagement would either eliminate a crucial enemy asset or potentially compromise the entire mission. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders as she prepared to attempt the longest shot of her military career. The moment arrived with devastating precision. Sarah's rifle cracked once across the Afghan valley, the sound echoing off distant peaks like thunder rolling through the mountains. Through her scope, she watched the enemy bomb maker collapse instantly, his body falling forward